if you're going to Washington, D.C., you're going to want to do that. And if you're doing this in the springtime of 2024, they've got an amazing theater. We got to go into the theater and watch a play of Prince Caspian. Welcome to the Leveraging Success Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Gerhardt. Every time that we're together, I want to help you truly work less, find ways to make more, and through that freedom, you gain the margin that you'll store up. And you're going to be able to use that to be an incredible husband, wife, parent, and most importantly, an incredible kingdom leader, living the life mission that God put you on. That's what we're all about, is to find the thing, God, you made me for here so that I can make the most of these 60, 70, 80, 90, I don't know how many years we'll have, but to make the most of them so that someday we'll be able to look back at this in eternity and say, I made the most of what God made me to do. Now, what did God make you to do? It's really our topic today, and it's centered around a question, this centering question of what is my calling? Now, if you're like me, you're a fan of things like Simon, Three Golden Circles, how to find your why, all of that leading to the answer of what is my most and greatest contribution that I can make in the world. And to that extent, it's God, why did you make me? And what am I here for? I want to help you with that. And to get to that answer today, we're going to be focused there. I want to tell you, we're here in spring. And spring is one of these times where all of a sudden the whole environment's changing. We're going from colder temperatures to warmer temperatures. And for much of the United States, there's been an early spring showing up, even though officially it didn't come until March 19th. And so with that date being the official date, what we understand, though, is that the warming has been going on. And we experienced that last week. In fact, we got to be on spring break and we had a fantastic time being with family. Our time was spent with Heather and I and our two sons out in first Washington, D.C. What an amazing place, right? We're able to go around from site to site. And may I recommend to you that you take a night tour of this beautiful city. What's so incredible about the night tour is just how beautiful the lighting is on these incredible memorials. And as you go to them and you read, which the funny thing is that anytime I'm at a memorial or a museum, I'm going to be the anchor, the caboose to the entire train for the family. I'm going to be the one reading every single plaque, every single sign that's there, and I'm just drinking in all of the information. And so while we're in Washington, D.C. for a few days at the beginning of spring break, the first thing is this night tour of Washington, D.C. And as we're going to these places and I'm reading and reading, I'm just stunned at the wisdom, how strong a foundation the United States was built on. And so much of what we do needs the reminder of what's most important, the why, and that why as a reminder helps us to strengthen resolve towards why we go forward. And so it's just like reading your Bible in the morning and spending time with the Lord. As you're doing this, it's a recenter of why, my resolve, the comfort of, and that provided that. I mean, even for my sons who were experiencing this place for the very first time, they were put back into awe. They had all sorts of really great questions. But that wasn't the focus, by the way. That was really a bonus of our Washington, D.C. short trip to this spring break. We also got to go to the Museum of the Bible, which, if you've never been, it was our first time, and I just highly recommend it. What an incredible review of just things, as well as deep history on how did this incredible document, God's word, get breathed into existence? How is it carried forward? And what is the impact to cultures, society, and people been generation after generation. So if you're going to Washington, D.C., you're going to want to do that. And if you're doing this in the springtime of 2024, they've got an amazing theater. We got to go into the theater and watch a play of Prince Caspian, C.S. Lewis's great book, put to play. And we had an amazing time. I mean, they were incredible. The theatrics, the acting, the sets, the lighting, the sound, it was just Broadway quality, incredible, great story. We spent the entire day at the Museum of the Bible. It was just that good. And we walked out of there full hearts. Next day, on our way to meet some friends and spend some time at West Point in upstate New York. We stopped through Philadelphia. While we were there, we got to see some of the sights, and really the most of Philadelphia was spent understanding who was Benjamin Franklin, what is his rich story, and where he came from, how he got to Philadelphia, where his life led him, and how he was an important part of the founding of the United States, being an ambassador to Europe. Just incredible history. And that was just a brief afternoon filled with a Philly cheesesteak. And so I can recommend to you the Reading Terminal if you ever want to go to a place where you're going to get to see an incredible marketplace with all sorts of history and eat incredible food. That's what we did. And so we got down there and had that, and then continued driving up to upstate New York. And as we passed by New York City from the New Jersey side on our way up and saw the Statue of Liberty, we got all the way to West Point. And what an incredible place that is. Now, I wasn't as familiar with that. I know lots of incredible people, men that have gone through West Point. Many of them are friends. Some of them are alumni of the master's program. And because we're involved with them, I've always seen just high caliber, high quality men that have come out of West Point. And so my impression of that place was they just produce incredible people. So we went up to West Point to be with our new friends up there, now our dear friends, and they were touring us through West Point and giving us access behind the scenes to be able to see what does life look like here. My goodness, my impression of West Point is just so beautiful. And we've lived in Switzerland, which is another idyllic, incredible, every time you look out your window, beauty that looks like a painting. It felt the same way being at West Point. And we got to meet more men and women who were just incredible people. We were hosted to go into an incredible class. And while we were there, I was thinking to myself, gosh, if I was a lot younger and starting over again, this would have been a great start for me. So it's just a really good time of family and memories, and always setting up our children to be able to have a broader expanse of experiences. And as they have those, they start to have reference points of what's possible. Because if they're only left to the bubble of what they've seen, they may not be ready for the vision for what could be. And this opportunity, every spring break, really every vacation for us, we're looking to pour in and to enjoy ourselves for sure. But the pour in here at this trip for our family and mostly for our sons was all about how can you get a reference point for how important ideas are, leadership is, discipline, and see the outcomes that are incredible as a result of that. Now their vision expanded, and the opportunity for Zach and Jacob, our sons, to think about what could be, could West Point be a part of their future? What is God calling them to? Again, our topic for today, I'm going to peel that apart, not so much in their context, but really for those of you who listen to this, and those of you who listen to our podcast, this is really the opportunity to be with you who are successful. And you've achieved that level of success in your own path. Many of you are entrepreneurs, executives, business owners. And as you've gone through that path that found you there, not everyone blazed the same trail that you blazed or went that same path, but you got there. And so the question is, will I rinse and repeat that success over and over again? Or was I made for more? Was all of this given to me Now I want to figure out what I want to do with that. God, what would you have me do with it? Because when I consider to whom much has been given, much is expected, I start to say to myself, I want to make something of this. I'm not just a normal person. I want to not think of myself as more important than anyone else per se, but that I'm looking at this saying there's just too much good things that have happened. And so, what am I going to do with these good things to make it so that I maximize everything that God gave me? Getting to the answer of why did you put me here, God? What's my calling? I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But first, let me get you into some news. Every time that we're together, I also like to update you on what's going on in the world and give you my opinion as well as a viewpoint that can lead you with your own mindset as a leader. Hey, in the news today, I want to bring up the fact that just announced is that the CEO of Hertz is resigning. And he resigned after a terrible quarter financial results, and he's resigning effective March 31st, 2024. Now, this CEO, Stephen Scher, he's resigned. And what's so interesting about this is we all watched Hertz become early adopters in electric vehicles. Now, I have to say that just because of innovation, and I'm a fan of Elon Musk, I can look at and see the incredible ability to will things into being, things that the institutions couldn't take on, he takes on. NASA couldn't do what he's doing. He's revitalized space travel and put out a vision that an institution like NASA couldn't take on, and they're following his lead. Or all the big automakers, the big automakers that are out there, they were institutionalized into fossil fuels and somewhat hybrids. But he has taken a vision towards electronic vehicles and put those forward. And of course, with every trail blazed as an innovator, you bring the challenges of you're going to have to discover things. You're going to have to fail, but not stop. You're going to use every opportunity to win or learn while you're on the path towards the thing that you're innovating towards. So he's an amazing person, very admirable for the approach to take to innovate things. But here we've got Hertz, who become an early adopter of saying, we're going to make a big part of our fleet Teslas. And these EV cars are going to be less maintenance. And it just makes sense that it's going to cost us less. We're not going to have to deal with as much. But unfortunately, that was completely untrue. In fact, these cars have their own operational challenges, as any machine has. And simply saying it's going to take us less cost them a lot. In fact, going so deep in this now, Hertz is trying to offload their EV fleet and sell quite a few of their cars. In fact, it's been publicized for many months now that if you're looking for a used Tesla, you want to look at the Hertz car sales site, because they're selling them so quickly and trying to offload all of these capital assets that they're no longer going to make a part of their key strategy. Now, why is this interesting to me? I'm certainly not dancing on the failure of Stephen Scher and what's happened here with Hertz, as much as just the learning of that, right? Is that we're never failing. We're only learning or winning or and advancing forward. And so the learning for this is, what does it take to be an early adopter? Early adopters are going to have a certain amount of difficulty. As you can see, Elon Musk's difficulties in every one of his new ventures, whether the Boring Company, which I read just recently got a major contract in Las Vegas, to Starlink, to SpaceX, to Tesla, and so on, is that every innovator is going to take the challenges of blazing the trails, and then there'll be fast followers. And that the early adopters of the technology, they get excited. And I really believe that ultimately Tesla is going to succeed. But my opinion on this is that I'm as early adopter as I am in technology, and I've always been an early adopter. This has been the one technology that I've put my toes in the water. What I'm talking about is electronic vehicles, EVs. I've put my foot in the water and tested them out to try to figure out, do I like this? Does it fit? Do I want to buy an EV? And I'm still on the sidelines. And being on the sidelines isn't because I don't want it. In fact, I think about it all the time. I look at the EV sites, the Tesla website, and think about, should I buy that car right now? Is this the right time for me? And I'm still waiting and seeing these updates and trying to decide, is this the right time? Should I push it off? Because I've seen so many things as well as I had a personal experience. So here's how I've tested out using electronic vehicles is that I went to the Turo website, and at Turo.com, I was able to rent some EVs along the way. I thought, you know what? I really like this X EV, the Tesla X, and it's got these incredible doors, the Falcon doors, I think they're called, that swing open. And so we went on Thanksgiving, the week of Thanksgiving. I rented one and thought, okay, I'm going to have this. I'm going to drive this around. We're going to drive to our Thanksgiving meal, and it's going to give us the experience we need to decide now's the time to move forward. I'm laughing already because what happened to us is that I needed to stop and hit a supercharger and get that EV filled up for my time because I'm preparing to turn it back in. And that's what we did. We pulled into a supercharger station, plugged it in. We knew it was going to be about 15 minutes or so. It's running, finished, unplugged, get it ready. And I pushed the button to start and it's dead. Nothing happens. And I'm pushing all sorts of buttons to try to get it to go. And the long story short is that the starter battery that's in the front of that thing didn't work, couldn't get it started. They had to come tow it away. And my thought was, oh my goodness, if this car is just a big heavy battery with no charge, no capability to move forward, that would be really frustrating. It's like seeing the spinning wheel on my phone or my computer when something's going wrong and it's not working. And I'm thinking, is that what I want in a car experience? Now, look, I fully believe completely. That's why I'm still pursuing Tesla and considering, will I buy an electric car someday, is that they're going to get this right. That was a one-off experience. But the sense for me is that I'm not going to be an early adopter. I'm going to be the guy that comes in the second or third wave to jump into this. That's what interests me with a company like Hertz that has a lot going for it and deciding to go so deep into that. I think that can lead people to think that the risk wasn't worth it. But the risk is worth it. The point of the matter is that when you're learning, the opportunity is to blaze the trail. And I guarantee you for certain, nobody knows how to step into this next phase of cars. Hertz does. They know how to deal with the EV market better than their competitors because they push forward. And hopefully they're holding on to all the learnings and not just thinking, forget about it as quickly as we can. Holding on to those things allows us to move forward and say, okay, I learned from this seeming failure. And as I solidify those learnings, I know that as we grow forward, I'm going to be able to use those learnings to still be going faster and further if I leverage the learning. We're leveraging success, of course. We're also leveraging the learnings. And leveraging the learnings then allow me to accelerate and continue to say, I'm not going to just let that be a bad experience, but something that I'm going to use as a reference going forward. All right, as promised, we're going to talk about what is your calling. Now, I want to give you a framework for this and trying to decide what your calling is. To be able to understand your calling, you have to understand, what did the Bible say about this? And how can I then understand it in that frame of reference? I got to tell you that most spiritual leaders, when I talk to them, or perhaps you talk to them about what is my calling or what is calling, they give you some sort of answer that feels like I've got to stare into my belly button until some sort of answer comes out. But that wasn't the point. It wasn't the point. And I'm going to make this really simple. And with that, allow you to use that as a framework to consider, where are you at in this journey, and have you built all of the frameworks of calling and therefore that God's called you to. All right, so here's the simple one. It's the most important one. It's the first bridge. And you were called to be converted. And so that calling to be converted was one that God said, hey, there's one way to me, God, and it's through my son, Jesus. Jesus is the only answer. And so you have to decide, will I realize that, first of all, I'm broken, I'm sinful, I've got things about me that are not perfect, and that I have no way to stand before the judge someday and say, I'm righteous. I have a reason with which to be here because I'm perfect, and we're not. And so by that, we need the coverage for all of the things that we've done in our life. And so the calling to conversion is to first accept Jesus as our Lord and Savior. And having decided that I'm a sinful person that's imperfect, that lives in a broken world, and my only reconciliation to a perfect, just God is through conversion, saying yes to Jesus, that's the beginning. That's the first calling. Now, having crossed that bridge, oftentimes that's as far as many followers of Christ ever get. They go through this process of saying yes to Jesus. I recognize that I'm a sinner. I need you, Jesus. And they cross over that, and that's it. But there's more. And the next part of this is a calling to be transformed. And that calling to be transformed is to put our lives on a altar in front of God and say, this is all yours. I want to conform and transform into the person that you want me to be, and ultimately to follow all the commands of Christ, to continue to die to self and decide that my life is not as important as the life that you're inviting me to. So transformation is the second one. And this is the building of the core of me, growing my spiritual life. My soul starts to reflect that. My mind, my body, they should all be in a growth path in transformation, in service to the King. Now, we were called to be converted. We were called to be transformed. The third part of this construct is a call to faithfulness. Now, our calling is to be faithful where we're at in every agreement and responsibility that we've put ourselves in. Did you get married? Then stay faithful in that marriage. Did you have children? Whether they are of your seed or adopted, do you have them? Are they your responsibility? Then be faithful with those children. Do you have a career? Do you have contracts, agreements, responsibilities inside of that? Then maximize faithfulness there. And then you've got your resources, all of your assets, your finances, your 401ks, your Roth IRAs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these things that are your resources, be faithful with those things, faithfully operate them for the outcomes that God expects. And that is fruitfulness, which is the fourth opportunity for you to follow the calling of your life. Now, conversion, transformation, then faithfulness, finally fruitfulness. Now, I need to explain what fruitfulness is. We want to understand, God, what do you consider fruitfulness? Fruitfulness has the outcome of the mixture of what Jesus said is the Great Command and the Great Commission. Now, we call it those things. The Great Command is when the lawyers tried to trick Jesus and wanted to hear him say, what's the most important command? And Jesus comes out and says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. So loving God. And second most is love your neighbor as you love yourself. So love God and love people. Critical, foundational. This is a part of being fruitful. Loving God with everything that I have. Loving people and just loving them and caring for them and seeing God's image in them. And third, it would be to make disciples. This is the Great Commission. And when Jesus said that, he was talking to all of us saying, hey, what I'm telling you to do, this is the mission of the organization, is to go baptize, teach them everything I commanded you. So go baptize, teach. All right. So here then, to be fruitful, I want to be in every single operation that I've got, seeing the maximization of all three. There's no two first, there's no one first. Love God, love people, make disciples. Or we could make that into the term love God, love people, help other people love God, love people. And so this is the way to be fruitful. Now, as I'm thinking about this, what I'm understanding is that um, I need to be faithful first before I run out to be fruitful outside of my faithfulness. Okay. In other words, in the name of fruitfulness, I can't break things that I need to do in my faithfulness. God's never going to tell me, divorce your wife so that you can be more fruitful. Okay. That's not the setup here. In fact, what you should expect if you're doing your faithfulness right, the fruitfulness of love God, love people, make disciples is happening in your faithfulness. Conversion, transformation, faithfulness, fruitfulness. First, being faithful and seeing fruitfulness come from being faithful with your children. How are you raising them so that they're fruitful disciples? How are you supporting your wife to be healthy, happy, holy as your spouse? And then thinking always about the environment with which you can maximize your resources, and not just tithing, but giving and using that to advance the kingdom of love God, love people, make disciples. And then my career, how can I make everything that I do to create value in this world to help me love God, love people, make disciples? Now, as I'm building fruitfulness through faithfulness and I get my freedom, which is what I told you about at the very opening of this podcast. And every time we're together, we're looking to create more margin for you, more capacity. The more margin you've got in money, the more opportunity you can invest in, right? So as I hold cash back, I'm having opportunities to make investments. As you hold back time and more margin of time, you get your freedom from your career, and ultimately, as you get more leverage, your opportunity to do fruitful things that are outside just your faithfulness, the opportunities start to grow. And being successful, here's what you have to understand, is that so many people are looking to ask you to volunteer, be on their board, their committee, this and that, their elder, this and that, and they can tie you up in commitments. We've got to be careful about that. And perhaps I'm sure we'll talk about this in another episode to go deeper into how do you manage your calling. But for now, what you're trying to see is coming along the path that I said yes to Jesus. I've been in a process of transformation. And now what I've moved into is to continue to be faithful and go deeper and deeper in faithfulness, to make sure that those four areas or anything that I've committed to, that I have worked to see fruitfulness come from that. Now, the Bible says that God is scanning the earth for faithful men. And so as he's scanning to find faithful in me, in you, the opportunities to be invited into more fruitful activities is what we're after. Now, this is the calling opportunities. All of this is calling. All four of these are calling. Now the opportunity is to say, God, what did you make me for? What do I love to do? What's my why? And what could I start to spot that matches my capability next to fruitful opportunities that I could lead, I could be a part of, not just drafted into volunteer service or something that is beneath you, but something that would be beyond you. Look, here's the thing, is that if all we expect is that our pastors on Sunday and every other sort of spiritual leader out there is responsible for this work, and we're just waiting to be the soldier moving forward, I'm talking to successful people like you, and that is beneath you. You're not meant to be a soldier. God gave you all these capabilities. Why wouldn't you leverage them? Why not take the opportunity to say, now, I want to build a fruitful life. I want to build something that will not only be faithful, incredibly faithful, which is the things that we work on here in this podcast, as well as if you join us in the master's program, we give you strategies and help you to deepen the way with which to get faithfulness through leverage to be fruitfulness. And as you get your freedom, the more freedom and time that's stored up to go be fruitful and lead in places with your capability. Now, this is the process. This is the way with which you build a portfolio of fruitfulness. And as you do that, you're going to be able to take the thing that you're the best at, your why, your capability, the thing that you roll out of bed and do. And as you roll out of bed and do that and say, I'm better than 99% of the world at, and finding that answer, this is where your leadership here in the kingdom is the opportunity. I'm talking to you today because I'm hoping to see a whole new movement of men and women who would say, I'm gifted. I know that God's blessed me. I'm not going to just sit and give a lot of money alone to my local church. I'm going to decide the opportunity is greater, grander, and I'm going to lead my life in a way that leads others to love God, love people, make disciples. And could a new movement of Christ start as a result of marketplace leaders, successful people who would leverage their life and not just stay busy opening their email and saying, what do you want me to do today? But lead their lives in a way that would put the kingdom first in everything that they do. That's what gets me excited. It's the reason that I do what I do, is the ability to call people like you out to come with me to go where we're going, is to say, go be entrepreneurial, lead with your capability in the calling that God's got for your life. Hey, I want to thank you for joining me today on another episode of Leveraging Success. I'm so glad that you come to be here, and I'd love to continue to do this with you. So please follow this podcast, or subscribe if you're watching here on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. I also just love hearing your feedback. So please make sure to leave me a review. You can also email me at jeff@leveragingsuccesspodcast.com to tell me what you think of the show, what you like, and what you'd like to hear more of. I'm really happy to address your questions, to take them live here on the show. Finally, I have a free offer for all of our listeners. In the show notes, you can do a 7-part e-course that I've put on called Life Mastery. You're going to get an email every day from me for 7 days on how to get going in Life Mastery. It's a boot camp to start the strengthening of your life towards what I've been talking to you about today. And if you're interested in going further, you can watch the webinar that I've got on our website. The link is in the show notes. And at the end of the webinar, you'll have an opportunity to sign up for more time with me directly. Hey, I'm so glad that you're here today, working less, making more, and taking the gain to be incredible and have an impactful life that will matter forever. I'm your host, Jeff Gearhart. Until next time, God bless you.